Thank you for being here tonight. It's a beautiful evening, so I appreciate you coming back indoors. And the summer is still here to be enjoyed, so we appreciate you being here tonight. We do have a number of board members and district and school level staff that are also here tonight, so they're also great sources of information. And the presentation tonight will be an informational message or informational set of recommendations and budget reduction information for the community for consideration that we presented on Monday night at the board meeting on September 23rd for our phase 2 budget reductions and realignment process. We also did talk about this timeline at the August 26th school board meeting, and where we talked process and timeline as well as the September 9th work session. So I'll be referring to those nights and the work that was done by our school board and our administration throughout the presentation. So with our agenda tonight, I'll be discussing that process for phase 2, the reductions and realignments that are recommended, as well as if you go through this list here, it's really a series of explanations for how we got here. It's also talking about key dates and timeline, and then ways we are trying to collect community input and feedback in relation to the process itself. Be about a 25-minute presentation, and we'll also then at that point transition to more of an open house style format where you're welcome to go up and discuss the content of the presentation with district and school leaders. And also I strongly encourage you to take time to present your questions, provide feedback digitally. We'll have a QR code at the end that you can fill that out on your phone. We do have some Chromebooks here over to the side that can be used as well. And I know that information will be on our website to lead to that feedback page. So we are going to strongly encourage everyone to do that. It's very important for us to get that feedback in writing, to have really consistent, objective feedback that allows us to quantify that, and instead of relying on our subjective conversations that happen. So to get started, our district mission is to effectively educate each student for success. And the Anoka-Hennepin School District covers a large geographical area in the 13 communities we serve, but the focus is in our schools and on each individual learner. The district mission statement provides us that focus, and we are working to reach each and every student and constantly looking to increase our impact on the system. We do that through setting priorities with our school board on the next slide here. And this year, our priorities are around literacy, student connection and behavior, and our workforce. And those three things do three things for us. They provide safe and welcoming environments when we're effective at it. We are trying to increase student achievement and also provide effective organizational support. And we really narrow down the scope of those three priorities to give added focus. So just by simplifying that list gives us a stronger opportunity for effective results and really increase our commitment and hopefully better outcomes for our students. So just a couple high-level basics about our district. So we're pushing 37,000 students with our enrollment. We serve over 253,000 residents. We have 13 communities in 2 counties, 7 high schools, 6 middle schools, 25 elementary schools, and numerous other specialty sites. We're just shy of 8,000 total employees, and our general fund budget is about $660 million, under which about 350 of that is the unrestricted funding that we could look at for any potential budget adjustments. The rest of that is in restricted areas designated by law for how those dollars are used. And just as a district, we formed in 1952. We have some big anniversaries coming up. I know of one of our elementary schools that is having a 75th anniversary this year. So there's a proud tradition in the district, and our schools have over the years received broad support from our communities. To jump right into how we got here, I shared this information at our August 26th board meeting, and again at our September 9th work session, and Monday night at our board meeting. These are the reasons why not just Anoka-Hennepin, but all districts across the state are truly making some tough decisions because of a convergence of different factors coming together at the same time. So not just any one thing, but a combination of things. So starting with enrollment, we are lucky to have stable enrollment. We are not growing, we are not declining, but that also means we are not going to anticipate a large increase or a large decrease in funding because our enrollment and every district's enrollment drives funding, it drives our staffing. We are allocated funds from the state based on our enrollment counts. So that is one variable to keep in mind. Another one is that this is the last year for our federal pandemic relief funds. So the added supports we've had in our system will create an impact when those dollars go away. We also have 18 employee groups and employee contract settlements. This past year were higher really across the state than the dollars allocated by the state. And this was a general pattern in the metro and statewide. So just generally speaking, when we get 3% or less, and that's what we anticipate with the funding formula tied to the Consumer Price Index, compare that to the cost of business of 5 to 10% of inflation and the cost of goods and services. That's the pressure point we're feeling, as well as all the other districts in the state at this point. So, and we have some things on the horizon that we expect large increases around. We do have a transportation contract coming, and that'll also have an impact. And we don't anticipate any new federal revenue other than the small increases that may come from the legislature that have continued to fall and lag behind inflationary rates. Also, the district and all districts in Minnesota did receive several new mandates that did not come with any additional funding, or some one-time funding that will run out. So we've been working hard to let our legislature know that if you're going to ask us to do more, please give us the resources to effectively get that done and be able to sustain those efforts. So the combination of those things really hit us, and in February we initiated a two-phase budget reduction process for the 25-26 school year, and we launched that in the late winter and completed that in the spring. I'll cover those things first here. We call that phase 1 reductions. That was done this past spring of 2024. Just by way of context, with budget reductions, there are 41 area metro school districts. The projection is over $300 million in shortfall and in reduction across those 41 metro districts. And that just says the Anoka-Hennepin School District is not alone, not just in the metro, but across Minnesota. So it was our goal, knowing that, to work quickly with phase 1. So we moved through the spring and completed $5.1 million of central office reductions in our district administration. That was 40 positions reduced, another nearly 8 realigned to free up the general fund dollars we needed to, and nearly affecting 50 positions. So our original target was $30 million. We were able to, with additional year-end closure, to lower that number down to $26 million. So that $5 million takes us down to $21 million is what we have left to address at this point in time with phase 2. And this information was shared out widely in the spring through multiple communication modalities, and those are now complete. Those phase 1 reductions are complete. Phase 2, so once we had our 24-25 budget finished and approved at the end of June, the work of phase 2 reductions began in earnest in July. And as a result of the $5 million in central office reductions in phase 1, like I said, the new target was $21 million for phase 2 because we applied that $5 million towards the 26 overall target. So some key dates in that decision-making process includes tonight's meeting, which is one of 5 community meetings, also going back, like I said earlier, the board meeting this past Monday, work session September 9th, and the August meeting, board meeting on August 26th. So the recommendations, like I said at the beginning, are going to be provided to the community and staff for review and feedback through these open house style meetings starting tonight and through an online survey process in really from late September through early October. And then any refinements to the recommendation will be made and presented at the October 28th board meeting. And then we'll have another month or so for additional feedback and input, and final recommendations made, or at least are expected to be made, on November 25th at the board meeting that evening. So once again, public input and feedback is very important in this process, and I want to highlight that staff, community members will have multiple school board meetings, community open house sessions, and an online survey to provide that feedback prior to board approval. Through the phase 2 process, as we began, we established planning parameters from the beginning. and they help shape the recommendation. And the key variables at play here as we look at where we're going to head is looking at our district strategic priorities that I covered earlier, looking at district enrollment, reviewing programs and services that currently exist, considering a phased reduction process, which you see through the phase 1 and phase 2 approach, looking again actually at central administrative and central office reductions, reviewing past reductions and the impact that they've had, looking at those restricted and unrestricted funding areas, looking at our fund balance and also class size by level, making sure that we're optimizing operations, looking at instructional supervision and collaboration time of our teacher schedules at the elementary, middle school, and high school level. And through those parameters, we took those considerations into mind as we began to formulate and develop these phase 2 reductions, and we'll continue to formulate and refine those as we move towards the November action of the board. So by way of review here, a little bit more of how we got here on this next slide is some options that were discussed at the September 9th work session. So after collecting input from the building and district level administration and leadership from July through the present, kind of through the summer, the cabinet and ultimately myself developed the following options and evaluating those, giving weight to several different considerations that I covered on the previous slide. So on September 9th at that work session, 5 options were presented and reviewed considering those vantage points, and all 5 of those options did include an additional $5 million in central office reductions, in addition to the phase 1 $5 million. So just briefly, the options that were discussed and considered that evening: an enrollment-based approach or model, a balanced instructional model, looking at instructional time, supervision, and collaboration time that really is tied to the middle school and high school schedules. Option 3 was a model that lessened the elementary impact, which really required more shifting of those reductions to the middle and high school levels. Option 4 was a bit more of a balanced approach across the elementary, middle, and high school levels. And then option 5 is a referendum or an operating referendum option for November of 2025, and getting there through a bridge reduction or in realignment of $5 million at the district office, and then sunsetting about $10 million of prior strategic investments, those one-time dollars, 2 years ahead of schedule. There's 2 years left on that plan, along with trying to keep our fund balance at 6%. So at the September work session, I provided 2 recommendations for the board to consider as we move through that process. First, there was a recommendation to make the reductions we have in front of us now. Make those decisions this fall. And it's a busy time of day, right, with activities, so I'll repeat that again so you make sure we catch that. So 2 recommendations were made at the work session on September 9th and again on Monday night. One is make reductions now kind of option, and one is how do you bridge to a referendum in November to take that to the voters of Anoka-Hennepin in 2025. So this next slide is where we started on September 9th. This was the preliminary recommendation number 1. And of the 5 options I talked about, really 4 of them were the options for how to make reductions now. This recommendation ended up being a hybrid of those options. It really was a balanced approach by trying to limit the amount of reductions at the school level and in the classroom. So we had made an early adjustment. If you notice, I had said phase 2 started with $5 million, and right away on September 9th, we added $2 million more to that to get us to $12 million at the central office overall, to lessen the impact at the buildings by that $2 million. Trying to do that in a fair fashion with the intent that we're trying to do the best we can with instruction at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. So at this point in time, on September 9th, that was about 54% of the total reductions at the school level, and the other 46% at the district or central office level, and I'll have a little bit more on that in a moment. One of the things that we also talked about at length, not just on September 9th, but many other work sessions and meetings, was a consideration of the middle school schedule And that was done through a middle school program review, actually started well before any budget reduction process was started, to really look at how do we balance instructional time, supervision, and collaboration time across the levels, elementary, middle, and high school. And potential schedule changes have been shared through that process, actually through a series of other community meetings, online surveys, presentations, and discussions at board meetings. So I do want to take a moment to thank the team that took a very serious approach and a very comprehensive approach to that middle school program review process to just make sure we are fully informed of the options in front of us. The next slide here covers the second recommendation that was made on September 9th. So this is that referendum option with a district reduction. So this would to consider a bridge to get to that 26 million in reductions and reallocations, a pathway there. District fund balance would need to be maintained at 6%, which is below the 10% policy goal. The elimination of one-time money, strategic investments, for roughly about 50 support positions over the next 2 years. Those are one-time dollars and not ongoing revenue, so that is what we mean by strategic investments. Those would need to be eliminated right away, along with an additional $5 million at the district office to make sure we could bridge to that referendum or voter request. So that still leaves the additional $12.25 million in cuts. Should you go towards a referendum, or should the district and the board go that way, you would pause or wait on those elementary, middle, and high school reductions for the time being until the outcome of the referendum was decided. So that is the bridge, so to speak, to a voter involvement option. And then from there, depending on the outcome, the district would need to look at making any additional reductions pending that outcome at the elementary, middle, and high school levels, and or any additional district level adjustments. So after that discussion with the school board on the work session, that was a really rich, robust discussion with different perspectives, and there was some clear direction there on what can we do to minimize even more the impact at the school levels. So at the Monday night at the September 23rd school board meeting, I revised my recommendation for the board. Again, they weren't voting on that. It was just a preliminary recommendation for the opportunity for feedback and discussion. And this reflects an additional downward adjustment to the elementary reductions by an additional $1 million. Now down to $4.2 million, which is $3.2 million down from the original option number 1 discussed back about a month earlier. So considerable efforts to bring that target down, especially at the elementary level, but also bringing down targets at the middle and high school level. The middle school level brought down $500,000, and the high school level $250,000. To accomplish that, the central office reductions have to be increased. So that was a $1.75 million addition to the phase 2 reduction for the central office, bringing that to 8.7 in addition to the $5 million that was done in phase 1. So again, the intent is to minimize the impact at the school level by doing everything we can to take on more reductions at the central office. Also, based just on the discussion and the direction the board was going in from the September 9th work session, I removed and revised my recommendation to no longer include those specific middle school and high school schedule changes, changing from a 7-period to a 6-period day, and changing at the middle level, and from a 5 to a 6 at the high school level. There just wasn't board support for that, and I'm again proud of, that was an informed decision through the processes that we've gone through to get to that point. Recommendation number 2 was not revised, so that still stands the same. On the next slide is, again, a bridge to a referendum option that is maintaining at least a 6% fund balance, an additional $5 million in central office reductions, and the elimination of the $10 million in strategic investments. And again, that would be a way to hold on the elementary, middle, and high school reductions until that election or that referendum vote can happen. So some details on the next few slides around how this shows up at this point in our process. So to make sure we're honoring contract language, agreements with our employees, and our human resources processes. You know, we're not at a point to be able to talk about specific positions or groups of positions, but we can talk about different categories that we anticipate reductions would show up in. And I'm going to walk through some of those high-level components. So at the elementary level, of that $4.2 million, to minimize that at the elementary level, 70% of those 4.2 reductions, or about 1.2 million, is away from the traditional classroom teacher versus, and really that's, if you think about it in another way, of our 26 million, the class size increased by 1 is about a 5% impact or a 5% portion of the total $26 million. So that was our way to try to really minimize the impact on the elementary level, meaning the remaining 95% of the district reductions are not happening at that elementary classroom, traditional classroom level. So that does mean they're out, you know, including other positions as you go down the list here, you can see the remaining elementary reductions are in those areas of instructional coaching and other support positions. The total number of positions is another way to look at it. So the elementary reduction is about 2.5% of the total number of elementary staff positions, and less than 1% or about 1% is in the traditional classroom. So very much minimizing the impact at the elementary level as much as possible. At the middle school level, without a middle school schedule change, the class sizes are estimated to increase by approximately 4. So right now, our range of class sizes at the middle school level is 29 to 33. That range will go up by 4. And that's something I want to make sure we try to clarify. And that's 1 less than what we are anticipating needed at the high school level, which would go up by 5. So our current ranges now are approximately 29 to 34, and that range would go up by 5 students at the high school level. At the middle level, we're talking about just shy of 6% of our total middle school staff positions. And at the high school level, it's just a little over 5.5%, about 5.3% of the total number of staff affected. Okay, so as we move through this one and on to the next one, I will point out too that you don't see some high school or very minimal middle school other impacts on this, and that's because those are funded through those strategic investments that I've talked about previously. So they would be addressed in another fashion depending on the outcome of a board decision on a referendum. So with the revised recommendation, if you go to the next slide, please, this is some of the additional reductions at the district level. So in phase 1, we did the 5.1 total reductions and realignment. This would bring another 90 to 100 additional positions to the 40 that were done in phase 1 of reductions. So an additional 90 to 100 positions being affected. And that would, we're moving through that process, like I said, so that we don't violate any employee contracts or bargaining agreements or private personnel data through our HR procedures. So we're now at a different point. If you think about this, the central office is now at a majority of the reductions at 53%, with approximately 30% or 1/3 of our district office positions being affected, versus the 2 to 6% of the positions being affected at the school site. So that is by design. We are trying to minimize the impact at the school level by taking on nearly, affecting nearly 1/3 of our district central office support to really keep that impact low at the elementary and middle and high school level. Some additional realignment. So I'm shifting into realignments now and not reductions. These are also ways to help us avoid additional staff reductions. And we have about $2.9 million here of additional realignments we can make. So in the area of child nutrition, we can make a shift to free up some general fund dollars to avoid making additional staff cuts, another $400,000 in our technology department, about $120,000 worth of community education adjustments. And then with some new legislation at the state, we can do some recoding of some of our support positions in counselors and social workers. As the ESSERs and COVID relief funds expire, we now have the ability to make some shifts there to really free up additional dollars in the general fund to help minimize staff reductions. So that is another significant way on how we lower down those targets for elementary, middle, and high school. And before moving on, I just want to kind of provide one last set of data that gives us some context. So, and I mentioned this at the board meeting the other night, of the 34 largest districts in the state, we're 30th out of 34 with the amount of money we spend at the district administrative level. We're at 2.8%. That ranks us 30th out of the 34 largest districts. And we're even lower when it comes to district operations. We're 33rd in district operations. And conversely, we're at 15th in regular instruction or general education, and we're 11th in student support and special education. So I think it's a testament to the district over time being committed to providing as much resource that district has at the classroom and building level, running the district on a very lean administrative central office model. And that'll only be leaner with this proposed model to really try to minimize that impact at the district level. So looking ahead, this is a visual way to look at the timeline and represent the dates I shared earlier in the evening. So tonight we have our first of 5 community sessions that are happening here in September and early October. We'll have an opportunity to make any refinements to those recommendations of the 2 recommendations that I've made to the school board by our October 28th board meeting. Then we'll have another roughly month or so for additional input feedback for final recommendations to be made for the November 25th board meeting so that we can be ahead of our staffing process and really our obligations around our employee contracts. So from a community feedback perspective, on the next slide we show that we've launched a number of ways to communicate out and to accept feedback coming in. District email was sent to families on Tuesday the 24th, so yesterday. Article published on our district and school websites, and then also in our Focus e-newsletter will be coming out on October 2nd. And that'll also include how to find that online feedback form. So a number of ways to provide impact and input and feedback so that we can measure that. We very much want that to be consistent in fashion and also objective in fashion. Make sure that we have a robust process for that to occur. That's a priority of ours. Looking forward, we have tonight's meeting, and then we have a series of other meetings also coming up at each one of our primary high schools. Tuesday, October 1st at Andover, Wednesday, October 2nd at Champlain Park High School, October 8th at Blaine High School, and lastly, October 9th at Anoka High School, all starting at 6 p.m. Again, the online survey is available online. You're going to have a ways to connect to it here tonight as well. That'll be that's live and will stay live well into early October. So here's a way to get there. Here's a QR code that people can use just on any device that can kind of snap that picture and take you to the Google form that allows you to answer some key questions. Again, we have some different options here tonight to get there. And it's really important for us to be able to get that consistent feedback in an objective way and be able to quantify that. It's been a process that's worked well for the district in the past when it comes to budget decisions, boundary decisions, past referendum, things like that. So it's been a strong, reliable method to try to make sure everyone has an equal opportunity to provide feedback. So that really wraps up the presentation tonight. I think I did it under 30 minutes. Thank you for coming out this evening, and please take advantage of the staff who are here. And then I strongly ask our community members in the audience tonight, please complete that form. However you can get there, we want that feedback in writing so that we can consider that along with all the other feedback we get throughout the process. With that being said, I'll wrap up. Thank you very much, and I appreciate you coming out on a beautiful September evening. So thank you.